everyone. This is Jason Sansucci, Chief Architect of Juniper Unmanned. It is my pleasure to be moderating this session, the CEO to CEO Fireside Chat here at NestGen 2022 here on Tuesday. I hope you've been having a great session so far, a lot of networking. It is my pleasure to introduce this panel on the effects of COVID-19 on drone autonomy. We're going to be diving deep with these illustrious CEOs. And without further ado, let me just have them introduce themselves briefly, and then we'll dive right into the questions. So let's go ahead and go around the horn. Let's start with Gemma.
Hi guys, I'm Gemma Alcock. I'm founder and CEO of Skybound Rescuer. We specialize in the use of drones for public safety. I'm also the director of air operations for Lowland Rescue, which is a search and rescue charity here in the UK. With 34 SAR teams, and we search for missing vulnerable people on behalf of our police forces. And I manage how they train and use drones and interact with the SAR helicopter services.
Excellent. Let's move to Dawn Zoldai.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Dawn Zoldai here, CEO of P3 Tech Consulting. A little bit of background. Let's see, 25 years active duty United States Air Force as a licensed attorney and what they call a JAG, and 2 years general counsel for the Air Force, and then 1 year on faculty at the United States Air Force Academy. So my business, I do many, many things. Jason is well aware of this because like him, I have my own podcast called The Dawn of Drones every Wednesday, 9 a.m. Mountain on Drone Life TV on YouTube, and write a lot. And I teach at 2 universities. So that's kind of the big overview.
Super busy. No, this is a great panel. And let's move last, but certainly not least, our host for this particular event, Nitin Gupta.
Thank you, Jason. So hello, everyone. I am Nitin Gupta. I am the founder and CEO of Flightbase. So as many of you know, Flightbase is in the business of building software tools, software platforms, helping our customers and our partners work or build on drone autonomy. So our focus has been drone autonomy, how to enable autonomous drones for various commercial applications, and we partner with various other companies in the drone ecosystem to provide the right solutions. Like for example, we are partners with drone manufacturing companies, with docking station manufacturers, as well as drone solution providers and drone users. And finally, together we are able to provide the complete solutions for drone autonomy. So thanks, Jason.
Absolutely. All right. So a couple housekeeping items. We're here on the main stage. If you have questions, you can go to the Q&A section and ask, and the backstage staff will tee up those questions for us. But we do have our own list of questions. We're very excited about them. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump right in. But first, actually, one thing real quick. If you want to learn more about these panelists, go to their LinkedIns, connect, follow, go to their podcast, subscribe, smash the like button, all those things. This is very important. We want to get our messages out there. We're all here to elevate the entire industry. So let's dive into these questions. Okay, so this is a question for everyone. And it's a bit of a softball. So we got to start easy, and then we're going to get way deeper. So what are the applications, sort of the low-hanging fruits that are the most appropriate for full drone autonomy? And we'll go backwards around the horn. Let's talk to Nitin first.
Sure. So, when it comes to drone autonomy, of course, it becomes very important to ensure safety and reliability of the systems. Safety, of course, is the kind of the most important thing that we care about for autonomous systems, because in an ideal situation, we are not expecting any human intervention whatsoever. So the systems have to continue to operate in a way that they are not causing any harm or any danger to anyone's life or property. Now, of course, in order to ensure the safety, or in order to increasingly build more and more sophisticated systems that are capable of ensuring that safety, we have to first start with applications that are inherently not very dangerous in nature. Like, for example, using drones for, say, mining sites. And these mining sites are quite away from the crowded areas or from the population. And that is why it is easier to get permissions or convince the regulators to allow us to do autonomous operations for such applications versus using drones for, say, delivery in an urban environment, which is inherently crowded, and it's a very complex airspace. You have other manned aviation in that airspace as well. So there are too many considerations that all have to be taken care of at the same time, and that is why it becomes very complex. So what we have seen is that most of our customers, they are first starting off with applications that are away from the crowded places, and where it is easier to get those sort of permissions or convince the regulators that the entire operations will be safe. Even in case of some malfunction, it will not be catastrophic. It can still be managed. And then as people start using or deploying such applications, they are able to build their safety cases or ensure that they have proper SOPs and proper systems in place, and they are able to generate enough data from that use case to convince the regulators to increasingly get permissions for more and more complex scenarios. So that has been our kind of experience so far.
That makes sense. And thanks to Tim. Let's, before we get too far into the regulations, let's see that out for Don here in just a moment. Don, what do you think are sort of the lower hanging fruits for full drone autonomy?
So we're going with the 4Ds here, Jason, right? The dull, dirty, dangerous, and difficult. I mean, this is exactly why we love drones. We love robots. This is why they will change society. So when you think about some of those, right off the top, I'm thinking about autonomous bridge inspections like we're already seeing in the United States and North Carolina statewide due to, Skydio's statewide BV loss waiver for that purpose. I mean, that's a perfect application. I also think of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma and some of the incredible work they're doing out there. I remember one of the very first articles I wrote for Insight Unmanned Systems magazine was about them. And they were literally dropping these giant boar buster feral hog traps from a drone. When you think of dull, dirty, dangerous, difficult, it sounds silly, but if you have to do that by hand and those animals are very dangerous, people get injured all the time, trying to do things like this. So they were dropping the traps, and they were also dropping, I believe feed into them as well. So you didn't have to go out and feed them. So just two examples. There's hundreds more. Any job you can possibly think of that meets the 4D criteria, perfect for autonomous drones.
Great. No, I completely agree, Don. Absolutely. The 4Ds are very well suited for full drone autonomy. And we'll dive into a little more granularity on that in a few minutes. Jem, over to you. I'm sure you have a different perspective.
Yeah, I think for autonomy, repeatability is important of the mission. And unfortunately, in public safety, we don't get much repeatability. No two emergencies are the same. If we are getting the same emergency many times over, then perhaps our prevention needs a bit of work. So something like searching, the challenge with searching is there's no two searches that are the same. So it takes a long time to gather data, understand the key variables and their dependencies, work out what works, what doesn't, in order to get to automation, let alone autonomy. But there are other applications that are slightly more repeatable in my world. So for example, an application I've been looking at with the Coast Guard is aerial patrols of high-risk areas. So multiple times a day, the drone will patrol a high-risk patch of water to try and find persons in distress or at risk. The mission plans are identical. The area we're covering changes slightly because, RIPs move position. They unfortunately don't stay in the same position all day, but it's very repeatable. However, there are still variables that impact our performance that will be different every time. Things like weather, the classic weather can impact visibility, amongst other things. So one patrol, we might be able to easily find that person, and then the next patrol, only a few hours down the line, perhaps it's high sea state, and no longer do we have a high probability of detecting that person. So in those cases, what we're doing is we are scoring those variable factors, those factors we can't control, so that we can say that patrol was done to 50% quality, and then the second patrol was 70% quality, so that we don't have to have a person in the loop assessing the performance, but we still have an indication of performance, because that is very vital for public safety.
Very unique perspective. Yeah, I would say we don't want any emergency to be exactly the same over and again. So that makes sense. So Don, we talked a little bit about this one's questions directly at you. How has COVID-19 impacted drone policy and regulations?
Well, Jason, I think oftentimes necessity is the mother of invention. And what we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic, which continues to persist, is this idea that social distancing is something that is desired. And the best social distancer is a drone. And so what you saw, I think, really from March of 2020 through now was this explosion of use cases, and in particular, drone deliveries of things like COVID testing kits, food to rural areas. And I get to this, I'm telling you about the use cases only because it's relevant to the regulation and the policies that we saw evolving insofar as in the United States, Part 107, got to stay within, visual line of sight. We saw a number of beyond visual line of sight waivers getting approved for this very reason. And in fact, Jason, just this morning, I was surfing around the FAA's website, which, by the way, is spectacular. If you go on their Part 107 waivers issued link, and you put in Part 107.31, which is visual line of sight, you'll pull up 85 entries, okay, for beyond visual line of sight waivers, essentially. And the most recent one was just 2/16/2022. So what was that, last week? Last week, to Iris Automation. And you'll see the companies that are getting these, what they're using them for. So again, what we see here is some additional kind of consideration, and flexibility on the part of the regulator, at least in the United States. The other thing I'll say about that, of course, is the Beyond Visual Line of Sight Aviation Rulemaking Committee, the BVLOS ARC, kicked off last year as well in earnest, and we're just waiting to get some word on that. And so, and then the final thing I'll say is kind of getting away. I guess it's still related to beyond visual line of sight, but also connected technologies. I know that's Nitin's area here, but our Beyond program, the FAA's Beyond program, which is that continuation, if you will, of the integration pilot program, the research and development aspect of what they're doing out there, is not just looking at beyond visual line of sight, but the critical technologies like detect and avoid, that the FAA is going to need to certify, right? That these are legitimate, these work. And so all of this ties together. And that's what I think you're seeing on not only the regulatory and policy front, but it all coalesces together, including the R&D front, and then what we saw as a result of COVID.
Right. Absolutely. Like I said, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Mother necessity of invention. We also know that there are other worldwide, people are looking at this differently. So this was the US perspective. Worldwide, there's definitely we're all trending the same way in bringing the industry up. So thank you, Don. Appreciate that. So next question's for Nitin. So drone autonomy, it seems super cool, right? There's a lot of things we can think about when you're thinking about drone autonomy, but let's talk about the realities, right? What are the realities of drone autonomy? Let's really dive into this. And how are the problems with full drone autonomy being mitigated today?
Right. So, Jason, as a drone autonomy company, what happens is we get very excited about building cool technology, right? So we are always excited about AI, machine learning, and making swarms and intelligent systems, and so many things, right? And it is, of course, very interesting and exciting to be working on those things. But what happened is over last couple of years, because of COVID, we realize that there are so many simple, easy problems for which we still do not have a good, reliable solution, which is affordable, which can be easily deployed and used by the masses. And that is what really struck us, and that is why we decided to focus on first solving this problem of drone docking stations, or helping our customers to be able to conduct these missions without having a person on the site, or being able to conduct these missions sitting remotely, right? So of course, regulations are one thing, but even from the technology side, even from the product availability side, it was such a big problem. We had customers who were operating in areas where they had very good relations with the government. They had the permission to operate a drone few hundred kilometers or few hundred miles away, but they just did not have the right products accessible to them that they can immediately go procure and start using. Right. So these docking station, for example, these used to be extremely expensive, and they're very complex. There are very few manufacturers who were building these systems, and just because they were selling so few of them, so it's kind of I mean, chicken egg sort of a problem, that they were building so few of them, so they were very expensive, and because they were very expensive, people were not able to buy and help them build these at scale. Right. So this was the realization that, okay, drone autonomy is of course the future, and we all agree to that, but where do we start from? And let's start by, first of all, enabling the customers who have the permissions, who have the requirements to deploy remote systems, to be able to do that in a way that is affordable, that is reliable, and it like kind of works all the time. Right. And that has been kind of our focus for last couple of years now. So we basically went out and we looked for, okay, what is available in the market, and how can we help these customers who want to deploy such systems. And there was like literally nothing available. And there were a few companies that we came across who were quite interested in building these docking stations. But again, no, it's initially it seems like a very trivial thing. It's just like a little box to house a drone. But when you start thinking of a production quality system, or system that can actually be used in large quantities by these customers day in, day out, it has so many complexities within. And if you start solving all those problems and building something which is production quality, which can be mass produced, and which is affordable, it becomes quite a massive kind of endeavor in itself. And that is what we have been doing for last couple of years now. And we are really proud and happy that now there are no more than 10 docking station partners that we have been working with. And the cost of these docking stations has now come down from the range of around $200,000 all the way to just about $15,000 to $20,000. So which is amazing. And it's a fraction of the previous cost, or order of a magnitude less than what these systems used to cost previously, because of which these systems are now being they've become very affordable. And that is why the number of systems that we have been able to sell or make available to our customers is far higher than what the other manufacturers were able to do in last 5 years. So that is a big change that we see now, and that is the kind of immediate problem that we wish to solve. That how do we make these systems super affordable and super reliable, and make them accessible to all these customers.
Those are all great points. So scalability and affordability, accessibility, those guide the changes that are happening on the hardware software side. Dawn, on the standards and certification side, what's guiding that? What needs to change for standards and certifications to get drone autonomy to happen?
Well, I don't mean to sound like a broken record here, but really going back to the beyond visual line of sight rule, I mean, we need one, right? So right now we're operating by exception, if you will. I mentioned there's 85 waivers approved. That's great. But I think that was in a sheet of 3,700 plus waivers. So do that math and you can see the small percentage that, even though we're seeing kind of a little bit of an uptick in that, we're just not there yet. And so, the research in the Beyond program and, what people are doing real world with these waivers will inform that safety case, and will in fact inform whatever that final rule is. And to your point earlier, Jason, absolutely globally, we're seeing the same thing. So when you think about Europe and you think about their use-based regulation, which essentially is their, unmanned aircraft system or uncrewed aircraft system traffic management, regulation, I mean, they've been exercising real world, like exercising these technologies and their regulation for about 2 years now. They just had the trials, the Gulf of Finland 2.0 this past fall, and that's going to continue on. And so, what needs to change? I think, some regulations still need to be written. The ones that are written need to be basically proven, and all of that is underway. The other thing I'll say about Canada, we think Europe, you think Canada, you think Australia. Canada and Australia, they're doing extended visual line of sight, or VLOS in some of the rules, and that's in Australia, and I believe Canada this past year passed a low risk beyond visual line of sight regulation, or at least they were tracking to do that. That's going to require some training, additional training for those pilots, because this, Jason, you're a pilot, and Jem, of course, operating beyond visual line of sight is a different deal than having something within your vision. And so that training is going to be critical too. It'll be interesting to see if that winds up in the final rule, or at least the notice of public rulemaking that we're hoping might come out this year in the United States. So globally, what needs to change? I don't know that anything necessarily needs to change. I think just things need to continue to progress.
Things need to progress. Yeah, for sure. So, Jem, this next question is for you. We're talking about drone autonomy. From your perspective, how is the appetite for it changing? I mean, there's a scale, right? From sort of level 0 to level 6, right? So as we move along that scale, how is that appetite for drone autonomy changing from your perspective?
Good question. I think the appetite for autonomy in public safety sector anyway is comparatively lower than other verticals. As I mentioned before, we don't have much repeatability. And I would say that they want it and they expect it in the future, but they're presently quite skeptical about its maturity and accuracy. It tends to be quite a risk-adverse sector, because we're not just risking time and money. If we make a mistake, we're risking lives as well, the lives of the public and our team members as well. So with autonomy, more so in our industry than other verticals within the drone industry, the system needs to be able to make decisions to the same standard or better than the skilled people of today. And that comes back to the problem I mentioned earlier of we need that data, and with some emergencies like a search, because there's so many variables and they're always changing, it's going to take time to get enough data so that we can actually learn how do we automate this and work towards autonomy. So yeah, I would say that the appetite in my sector is that it's improving. They want it, but it's they understand the benefits of it, right? Response times are everything. I think speeding up response kind of is a proxy metric for saving lives. The faster we can get there, the faster we can find them, the faster we can rescue them, and the better the survival rate. So we understand the benefits, we want it. It's just, it's not gonna, we might even be the last vertical to enjoy autonomy because of the complexity of getting it right and the importance of getting it right.
Jason, I'd love to jump onto that actually.
Yeah, go for it.
When you're talking about appetite, you're talking about public perception. And, that's something we talk about all the time, within this industry of how do we pierce that bubble? How do we get the public to accept? And, one thing I'll say about the FAA, when they did their Drone Safety Awareness Week this past year, one of the themes, they had a theme every day of the week. And one of the themes was public safety, public acceptance. And when I first saw that, I scratched my head. I'm like, what is this even about? Like, what is the connection? But I mean, I think Gemma just really hit the nail on the head when she said, look, the public is watching public safety. Like when they see a drone that public safety is using, that is forming an impression on them. And that's frankly where they're seeing it. They're not seeing it out on a construction site usually, right? Maybe they'll see a delivery in their neighborhood, maybe, but where it's very visible is in the public safety sector. And where I think autonomy would be perfect is what we're seeing already, like out in Chula Vista, the drone as first responder, getting to the scene quickly. But you think of other applications in public safety arena, we don't want them to be autonomous. Like we don't necessarily, certainly for lethal force, as an example, if you've got a fleeing felon, you can think of the scenarios that public safety, or in particular law enforcement, would have to, might want to use a drone for. Some of those, there should always be a human in the loop. Like there should not be, and I think the military, at least the United States, from an AI policy standpoint, has come down that way too, of having this human involved. We're not going to have drones and robots making decisions, taking people out. So, it just, the lawyer answer is it depends on what your exact use case is, whether in the public safety arena or elsewhere, whether or not it's a good fit, and you want it to be a good fit, because if it's not, now you've just detracted from this idea of public acceptance.
Absolutely. I'm just going to add on to this because I think this is, there's been many nails hit on the head, not just in this session, but Grant earlier today and some others that talking about public perception. I like this comment. I would love to see some facts behind this, but I'm willing to bet it's true. Gemma, there's been thousands of worldwide drone rescues, thousands. I would say if you start to weigh those compared to the off uses of, oh no, a drone's spying on me, and it's actually spying, not just they're inspecting utility poles and, Karen thinks you're spying. I think you're going to see that cost benefit is starting to shift, especially as more drone autonomy comes up, as the drone industry starts to bloom. You're going to start to see more on the public safety side. That is more of the life-saving, more of the, look, these are if you're really saving lives with drones, which we have absolutely proven, and it's accelerating rapidly, those use cases are going to start to, like Don said, they're going to make public perception swell in the positive, away from some of the potential use cases that, as standards and training happen for more drone pilots and start to be put into these autonomous drone in a box solutions, some of those things are going to go away. There's always going to be rogue actors, but for the most part, some of those things are going to go away with just good training. And so that's my opinion. I think it could be really interesting. I like this topic specifically, but there's a lot we could do, and we have more questions. Tim, coming to you next. So you actually mentioned this a little bit earlier. There's more than a dozen drone-in-a-box solutions that are available on the market. So how do we and you mentioned making it more accessible and approachable. How do we make it more accessible and approachable using lower cost, commercial off-the-shelf solutions?
Yes, Jason. So basically, that was the whole idea when we started 2 years ago to solve this problem. That what we realized is that many of the companies that started initially building drone in a box, they started in 2014, 2015 timeframe when reliable off-the-shelf drones were just not available. So if you remember, how the situation was 6 years ago, 7 years ago, it was really very there were just no off-the-shelf drones. You would have to assemble a drone to create a drone, right? So you would buy motors and ESCs and batteries and everything and put a drone together. And these drones would just keep falling apart, or something or the other will keep getting broken. That was the time when these companies started, and they started building the drones, the docking stations, the software, everything all by themselves. And that is what led to, of course, huge investments in R&D, and rightly so. However, what has happened during this time is with the emergence of DJI, Parrot, Autel, and some of these other manufacturers who were able to really solve the problem of getting a reliable drone in the hands of the masses. Right. So that really changed everything, in the drone world, as we know. And what happened is, because they were able to produce drones at such a large scale, they were able to bring the cost down. And not only the cost down, but these systems started becoming more and more reliable. And now, because for example, Mavic is sold in maybe like millions of quantities, and it is an extremely reliable drone which is available for like $1,000, $1,500 or so. So that's really a game changer if you look at it, right? So 5 years ago, 6 years ago, trying to get a drone at the level of reliability of a Mavic would cost you maybe $50,000 or something. Right, and now because it is being mass produced, they are able to lower the cost and build it at production level, in such large volumes. So the whole idea when we started 2 years ago was, okay, let's rethink, do we really need to create a new drone in order to build a drone in a box system, or just leverage what is already available in the market and work with some partners to create the right docking station for that drone and right subsystems, etc., cooling system, weather integration, and this and that. So that has been the approach, and this approach helped us lower down the cost significantly, as we discussed. And it's not like half the cost, 1/3 the cost, it's 1/10 the cost. So it's an order of magnitude. It's a huge difference, and that immediately opens up a very new market. Earlier, 2 years ago, if you look at, there were like maybe 2 or 3 docking station providers, and they were selling only to the government customers, or customers who could afford those $250,000 systems and so on. And now we are beginning to see an emergence of an entirely new market where people are planning to deploy these drones for their factory sites or their mining sites, and where they could not have been able to afford a $250,000 system, but $20,000, yes, it makes sense. Let me try it out. Let me start using it, and if it works at one of my sites, I will quickly expand it to 20 of other sites, right? So things become very interesting once you are able to bring things down to that sort of a price point and make it affordable and available so easily to a market that was underserved or not served at all just a couple of years ago. So that is where we are, and working with partners and leveraging each other's expertise to bring the cost down, because everybody is now doing things at scale. The hardware manufacturers are building at scale. The docking station manufacturers are again trying to sell hundreds and thousands of these docking stations instead of trying to sell only 5 or 10 of these in a month or in a year, as many of the other docking station manufacturers used to do 2 years ago. So everybody is doing at scale, because of which everybody is able to enjoy those economies of scale and bring the cost down and help grow the market.
Absolutely. No, that makes sense. Using mass production and having them bring to the new use cases, right? This isn't niche market anymore. This is now, we can throw these on trucks, go out to a site. We can put these in ag fields. We can put them in construction sites. They can go all over the place. They can sit on a beach and look for sharks. I mean, like, there's all types of things that fully autonomous systems can do without having a person in the loop. And I think this particular summit has definitely shown that. Now I'm gonna pivot. And I'm gonna ask a different question. So, and this is for everyone. And we're gonna start with Gemma. How far is too far with drone autonomy?
I like this question. And I think my answer is quite controversial given the space that I work in. I think most technologists have a vision of someday a team of robots does everything. And let's say someone's drowning, and maybe you use a drone to search and find that person, then drop an inflatable, and then an autonomous surface vehicle comes and rescues them to shore, right? And kind of, whilst that vision sounds awesome, I think I always try to start with the human, and how it might feel as the casualty in that scenario that is drowning. Then they've got something dropping on them, and they've got this robot driving towards them. Would that add to the distress? And also, I'm a bit concerned about the reality of the situation, the reality of that scenario as well. I have had to paddle out to many drowning casualties. I was a beach lifeguard for almost 8 years. And on quite a few of those occasions, all they needed to do was grab hold of the handles on the rescue board and they would have been safe. Instead, they chose to launch themselves at me, pull me off my rescue board. I have to drag them a bit deeper for them to let go, and then we try the rescue again. That is the recognized way of getting someone off you, by the way. I'm not just being mean. I mean, my point is that a drowning person is not thinking rationally, they're not thinking logically. And it is often the case that a person drowns a few meters from help. In the UK, cold water shock is a big killer. So you go into the water and you go straight into the shock state, and you can't control your breathing. You're submerged and you're essentially panting underwater. So you take on water really quickly. You have rapid extremity cooling. So you lose all dexterity. So basically you lose your ability to swim, even if you're a strong swimmer. In fact, University of Portsmouth over here in the UK tested this on Olympic swimmers, and even they lost their ability to swim when under the effects of cold water shock. So firstly, I do see some issues with dropping an inflatable on a drowning person for them to grab hold of. I know it has worked on some occasions, but it has to be able to be as reliable as a human rescuer in order to be a viable alternative. It can't just work in a few situations. And then throw into the mix kind of these rare conditions, like an example is the autonomic conflict death. So it's rare, but it happens. It's when, again, you're in cold water. Clearly, I know cold water very well, too well. You go into brachycardic state, which is a very low, slow heart rate. And then you see help is coming. Say you see that autonomous surface vehicle. That creates a spike in adrenaline, and then you go tachycardic, a high heart rate. And it's that sudden conflict that causes cardiac arrest. It's rare, but it can happen. Can that autonomous surface vehicle save someone in that unpredictable event as well as a human rescuer can? You know, these kind of unpredictable events. Can robots do it as well as humans? But all that to one side, if everything went to plan, would a person rather be rescued by a human or by a robot? You know, it's a traumatic event to be drowning. So the experience of the casualty, I think, should be taken into account. So I guess my question back to how far is too far with drone autonomy is around how does it make the casualty feel? And can robots deal with these unpredictable and every eventuality of an emergency as effectively as a human rescuer can? My view is that robots should be supporting those human rescuers rather than replacing them. So any autonomy that replaces the actual rescue happening like by a human, I think personally is too far. Unless I'm proven wrong on those two questions I mentioned. But yeah, that's my view on it.
That would be a fascinating study, honestly. Like, what if it looked like Wall-E? What if it was Wall-E coming at you rather than like this shark-looking torpedo? You know, obviously one would terrify you, and the other one would be like, "Oh, it's Wall-E." Let's go to Dawn. I would love to get your perspective on this question. How far is too far?
You know, I'm going to say one word here: Terminator. So look, you know, with my military background, when you think of autonomous systems, my brain goes right there because, you know, I can't think of too many commercial use cases where it would really offend the senses. When I say commercial, I mean industrial, right? Like agricultural. You know, when you think of all the normal verticals, I'm not talking public safety. Okay. But when you think about public safety in the homeland, domestically, or you think about the military on the battlefield, that's where I think we need to draw that line. And, you know, there's a brilliant woman at Duke University, Dr. Missy Cummings. She's a former, she's a retired Navy pilot and, you know, double engineer. I mean, her credentials are impeccable and insane. But she's written extensively about this concept of autonomous weapons systems, you know, particularly for the military. And like right now, of course, you know, to Gemma's point, you know, there are always going to be dynamic situations. You know, you've got a drowning person, they're going to panic, they're going to do, well, on the battlefield, there's or, you know, in an urban environment domestically, there's always going to be dynamic situations. Where, you know, okay, there's your target, but now all of a sudden a little kid's running into the line of fire. And, you know, that is why I think it is always so critical to have a human in or on the loop. Shameless plug, Jason. I'm just going to do it. Natin, I beg your indulgence. You know, going to have an AI policy panel at an event I'm running at AUVSI Exponential in Orlando, Florida on Monday, April 25th, called Law Tech Connect Workshop. I mention this because world-renowned people are part of the faculty for that. On the military side, Pat Houston, Brigadier General, United States Army, retired, is one of the preeminent minds in artificial intelligence and autonomous policy on the battlefield. And he is one of our panelists. That's just one example of so many. So we grapple with these. We're going to be grappling with these topics, Jason, in very much a workshop format, engaging people. So hope to see you all there. But these issues, and Tim, thank you so much for putting this virtual event together and your team, because these issues are so critically important to our industry. And hopefully we can see some of you live at AUVSI in Florida.
Thanks, Don. Yeah, no, shameless plugs are always allowed. Absolutely. 100%. There's no rules against this. This is our panel. We can say what we want, but we provided so much value today. You know what? But before we continue, Nitin, what are your thoughts? How far is too far? You are literally, this summit is your summit. Your company is putting this on. How far is too far?
Right. So, I mean, of course, Gemma is the person who has most closely, worked in these situations, and she's aware of, what works, what doesn't work, and what could cause or worsen the situation by using robots or by using autonomy. And she is right. But at the same time, as a technologist, I would like to believe that, we need to kind of dig deeper, identify what the problems are, and work on solving one at a time, and keep improving the systems till we get the desired results. Like, for example, 10 years ago, who would have thought that autonomous cars would be driving on our streets, right? And I mean, I remember 10 years ago, we used to have fierce debates of similar nature that autonomous cars they're never going to happen, and we need humans driving the cars and taking decisions on what to do, because if somebody loses life because of an autonomous car, then who is to be blamed? And what was the algorithm that was taking the decision to kind of do whatever the car did, and so on, right? And now 10 years later, I think everybody agrees that autonomous cars are going to happen. It's just a matter of whether it will take another couple of years or 10 more years, but it's going to happen, right? And we already now have cars that have driven millions of miles, and they have proven that they are safer than human drivers, right? So on basically, as a technologist, while I appreciate all the concerns that Gemma has, and of course those should be addressed, and we have to be mindful, and we have to design systems to kind of address those. But I still believe that if we take up one problem at a time, and we keep investing in building better and better systems, we will be able to design systems that can kind of address and solve those problems. It might take us a long time. It is not the low-hanging fruit that we discussed earlier in our conversation. It's a far higher or far difficult fruit to get hold of. But I think it's not impossible, and maybe 10 years later we will be having a very different conversation.
100%. I think this entire industry, and I see the live clock, we're clicking down. I think we're almost at 45 minutes right now. This has been amazing, and I highly recommend, like I said, follow this panel. We're all doing spectacularly amazing things in this industry, and we are just here to support the industry overall. Check out what we're doing. This has been a great panel. We kind of wandered away from COVID-19, but COVID-19 has definitely been the impetus around a lot of what's happening in this industry. It has truly pushed this industry exponential. It was heading there anyway. It was just a little bit of nudge that we needed to sort of get us there. So I want to thank the panelists, thank the CEOs. Thank you so much. This has been amazing, so much fun. And if we have any other questions, we could take them. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming to this Fireside Chat. My name is Jason Sansucci. I'm also the host of the Do You Know Drones podcast, another shameless plug. Feel free to subscribe to that on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. And we hope you have a great rest of this session.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.